You're watching T.C. McCarthy, the most handsome and entertaining science fiction author on video. Thanks for tuning in. Again, buy my book July 2nd. You can pre-order it now. It's coming out July 2nd, but pre-order it. The title is Tyger Burning from Baen Books. I did a link to a video earlier, where I explain why it's important to pre-order my books. It'll really help me get on the bestsellers lists. Now, what are we going to talk about today? Well, today we're going to talk about the X-15. And some of you, who, if you're young, are probably scratching your head going, what the heck is an X-15? But if you're an old fart like me, you grew up with the old space kind of program and we're steeped in the whole idea of the Mercury, Gemini, and Apollo mission sets. And X-15 was one of these things that played a key role in the early space program in allowing us to test some aspects of rocket flight, but doing it from basically from what one could argue was an early form of a space plane. It was the first aircraft. The X-15 was the first manned aircraft to reach hypersonic speeds. Now, I'm not sure what the definition is when you talk about hypersonic versus supersonic, but the X-15 was capable of traveling in excess of 5 times the speed of sound. And in fact, the X-15 went so high that some of the pilots who flew it went over 50 miles and earned astronauts' wings, because technically that was space. So they became astronauts not by taking part of the Mercury or Gemini missions, but by flying this X-15 space plane. Between 1959 and 1968, I think there were somewhere around the range of 199 flights of the X-15 before the program was canceled. And one of the things that people don't know or don't realize is that this was actually a joint Navy and NASA project. It wasn't Air Force. X-15 was a Navy aircraft. So how was the X-15 able to go so far, so high, so fast? Well, it was a rocket plane. The engine was actually a rocket engine, and this thing basically looked like a flying dart. It had short, stubby wings and a massive rocket engine to basically propel it up to over 50 miles above ground. And typically the way it would be flown is that a B-52 would have it basically tucked underneath it. It would go up to somewhere around 45,000 feet, somewhere around there, drop the X-15 out of the bottom of the B-52, and then the pilot of the X-15 would kick on the rocket engines, and that thing would just go off like a bat out of hell. Now, once it got high enough, the X-15, there was not enough air to use surface controls like you would in an atmosphere to maneuver the aircraft, and so it had little tiny jets, hydrogen peroxide powered kind of thrusters, to allow the pilot, once it got it in thin or no atmosphere, to move the nose up and down, etc. And the way it landed, it didn't have landing gear, but it would basically do a no-power descent, much like the shuttle used to do, where it would glide to a landing on skids and land in a dry lake bed in the desert of California. The fastest X-15, I think, went somewhere like 6.5, Mach 6.5 times the speed of sound. Now, the interesting thing about that flight, oh wait, no, I need to correct myself. It was 6.7. But anyway, the interesting thing about that flight, I think it was Jack McKay who flew it, and he actually wound up crashing. He survived, but it crushed his vertebrae to the point where he actually lost an inch of height, and I think that may have been his last flight. There were other flights that went so fast in the atmosphere that it wound up melting parts of the craft itself because of the friction of the atmosphere traveling over the control surfaces. So I think in one case, the tail actually partially melted. That thing was flying so fast. But the one mission I specifically wanted to cover today, talking about the X-15 program, is the one where actually somebody died. Mike Adams. He was the last X-15 pilot and the only pilot to have passed away as a result of an accident in flying the X-15 test aircraft. It happened on November 15th, 1967. Adams went up in the B-52 and dropped off just like he was supposed to. He was supposed to do a number of tests where he would have to basically waggle his wings to test some sort of sensor or camera, I can't remember which. And so what he did was he climbed to about 266,000 feet, very, very high. And at that point, he had a malfunction in one of his systems. In fact, malfunctions happened in the X-15 on almost every flight. And in this particular malfunction, I think something called a dampener went out of whack or something, and he had to turn off a couple of systems or reset one of his systems. And in doing so, what happened is that he turned off his indicator for yaw. And so when he's up there very close to or in space at that point, There's nothing to basically give him a frame of reference to let him know that he's yawed too far, and he started to lose control of the craft. So at that point, basically the aircraft started to spin uncontrollably, and he radioed down to the ground that he was having trouble, but at that point nobody knew enough about the X-15 characteristics. The people on the ground really couldn't help him with anything. Well, eventually he got the plane out of that spin, but at that point he was upside down and yawed 90 degrees over, and so it was almost impossible for him to get out of that particular situation. And before he could, he might have been able to recover from that, but before he could, the stress was building on the aircraft to the point where it started to break apart, lost its wings, etc. And at that point, he was doomed. The aircraft plummeted to the earth, slammed into the ground somewhere in California, and we lost a great, great American pilot. Now, Adams went over the 50-mile altitude mark and was posthumously awarded the astronaut's wings, and soon after that, the X-15 program was canceled altogether. So anyway, this is another one of these videos I wanted to kind of produce or make that would explain, spaceflight is dangerous. Just learning how to get into space is dangerous. Even flying aircraft can be dangerous. These men and women who go up and risk their lives are making a really big sacrifice for us, as are their families. And so Tyger burning, deals with almost, it takes place almost exclusively off Earth. And so getting to know these kinds of aspects of the dangers of any kind of spaceflight are an important part of doing research to write those kinds of books. What's my point? Buy my book. Buy Tyger Burning. Again, pre-order it. Comes out in July of 2019. End transmission. Hey, TC McCarthy here, the most eclectic and entertaining science fiction author on YouTube, maybe even the internet. Thanks for watching this video. I really appreciate you guys tuning in. As usual, buy my books. I've got a new one coming out in July, and I'll have a giveaway coming up soon, so stay tuned for that. Appreciate you subscribing to my channel, and please, 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 please don't forget to click that little bell icon so that whenever I upload new content, you get notified. Thanks again. See you soon.